Grace's legs could barely hold her weight. "Mrs. Mensah, please, I'm so sorry. I made a terrible mistake. Please let me explain." "There's nothing to explain, child. I heard every word. I felt every ounce of contempt." Mrs. Mensah picked up her envelope, the one Grace had tossed aside like garbage. "I'll return at 2 o'clock this afternoon. Have all staff assembled in the main hall." She walked toward the door with the same slow dignity she'd entered with. But now every eye followed her with recognition and fear. The moment the doors closed behind her, Grace collapsed against the counter. "Oh God! Oh God, what have I done?" Her voice cracked. "Patience, what have we done?" Patience was crying, mascara running down her cheeks. "We're finished. We're completely finished." Kofi stood by the entrance, his face buried in his hands. "I should have stopped you. I should have said something." The next 3 hours passed like a funeral march. Word spread through the branch like wildfire. Mr. Boateng returned from headquarters, his face ashen, as he read Mrs. Mensah's note. He called an emergency meeting but barely spoke, just paced back and forth, shaking his head. Grace sat at her desk, unable to focus on anything. She kept replaying the morning in her mind, the contempt in her own voice, the pain in that elderly woman's eyes, Mrs. Mensah's eyes. She pulled out her phone and searched for articles about the founder. There she was, Abena Mensah. Orphaned at 12, worked as a market seller, saved every seed for 10 years, applied to 23 banks for a business loan, rejected by every single one because she had no collateral, no education, no one to vouch for her worth. So she built her own bank, started with 13 clients, all market women like herself. Now, Evergreen served 500,000 families across Ghana. The profile photo showed her in elegant business attire, smiling warmly, but the eyes were the same, the eyes Grace had dismissed this morning. "I'm going to be sick," Grace whispered. At exactly 2 o'clock, a black Mercedes pulled up outside. Mrs. Mensah emerged, now dressed in a tailored navy suit, her silver hair styled perfectly. She carried herself like the CEO she was, and the transformation was complete. This was the woman Grace should have seen all along, hidden beneath rags and years. The entire staff gathered in the main hall. 32 employees, all silent, all terrified. Mrs. Mensah stood before them, and the weight of her presence filled every corner of the room. 27 years ago, she began, her voice steady and clear. "I walked into Ghana Commercial Bank dressed much like I was this morning. I had just received word that a small credit union was willing to give me a chance. I was so happy. I didn't think about changing my clothes first. I went straight from the market to share the good news with my account officer." She paused, and the silence was suffocating. The officer looked at me like I was dirt on his shoe. He said, and I will never forget his exact words, "Madam, people like you don't belong in institutions like this. There's a government welfare office 2 blocks down." Grace felt tears streaming down her face. Those were almost the exact words she'd used. I went home that night, and I cried. I cried because I believed him. I thought maybe he was right. Maybe I didn't belong. Mrs. Mensah's voice grew stronger. But then I got angry. Angry enough to prove him wrong. Angry enough to build something better. I built Evergreen so that no one would ever be told they don't belong because of how they look or where they come from. She turned her gaze directly to Grace. "Grace Okafor, Patience Addo, Kofi Mensah, step forward." Grace's legs barely functioned, But she moved forward. Patience sobbed openly beside her. Kofi's jaw was clenched, fighting back emotion. I didn't come here to humiliate you, Mrs. Mensah said quietly. I came to understand if the vision I built still lives in these walls. Grace, look at me. Grace forced herself to meet those eyes. Tell me what you saw this morning when I walked through those doors. Grace's voice shook. I saw someone I judged, someone I decided wasn't worth my time or respect, someone who reminded me of my own grandmother. And I was cruel to her anyway. The words tumbled out between sobs. I saw everything I promised myself I'd never become, and I became it anyway. Why? Because somewhere along the way, I forgot where I came from. I forgot that 5 years ago, I was the one being looked down on. I forgot that this job was supposed to mean something more than a salary. Mrs. Mensah nodded slowly. And now, what do you see? I see a woman who showed me the truth about myself, and I'm so deeply ashamed I can barely breathe. Shame is easy, Mrs. Mensah replied. Change is hard. I'm not firing you to punish you, Grace. I'm firing you because you need to find what you've lost, and you can't find it here. Not anymore. Not yet. She turned to Patience and Kofi. The same applies to all of you. Effective immediately, your employment is terminated, but not your worth. Never your worth. Mr. Boateng stepped forward with termination papers. Grace signed hers with trembling hands, barely able to see through her tears. This was it. 3 years of building her career, gone in a single morning, because she'd forgotten the most basic lesson her grandmother had taught her. Treat everyone with dignity, because you never know who they are or what they're carrying. Grace packed her desk in a daze. A photo of her grandmother fell from her drawer, the one taken the year before she died. Grandmother, who'd raised her alone after her parents died. Grandmother who'd worn similar faded clothes and worked in a similar market. Grandmother who'd be devastated to see what her granddaughter had become. Outside the bank, Grace sat on the curb, her box of belongings beside her. Patience joined her, and they sat in silence for a long time. What are we going to do? Patience finally whispered. I don't know, Grace admitted, but I know who I don't want to be anymore. The weeks that followed were the hardest of Grace's life. She applied to 20 jobs and got rejected from 19. The one that accepted her was a vendor stall at Macola Market, selling vegetables for a woman named Auntie Mercy, who didn't ask questions about her past. Grace woke at 4 in the morning to help unload trucks. She haggled with suppliers, swept floors, served customers in the blazing heat. Her designer clothes stayed in her closet. Her manicured nails grew ragged. Her carefully constructed image crumbled away, leaving only the raw truth of who she was. 3 months in, an elderly woman approached her stall. She wore tattered clothes and moved slowly, and Grace felt her old instincts flare up, the irritation, the judgment. Then she caught herself. Good morning, Mama, Grace said warmly. What can I get for you today? The woman smiled, surprised. Just some tomatoes, daughter, but I only have a little money. Grace filled a bag generously. Take these, Mama, my gift to you. God bless you, child. Not many young people show kindness anymore. After the woman left, Grace sat down on her stool and wept. She wept for who she'd been. She wept for the person she was trying to become. And she wept because, for the first time in months, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she was finding her way back to herself. That night, by candlelight in her small rented room, Grace began writing a letter. Not because she wanted her job back, not because she expected forgiveness, but because some things needed to be said. Dear Mrs. Mensah, she wrote, her hand steady. I don't write seeking employment or asking for mercy I haven't earned. I write because I finally understand what I destroyed that morning. It wasn't just your dignity I attacked. It was the dream you built, the promise you made to every person who's ever been dismissed or diminished. I volunteer now at Osu Night Shelter 3 evenings a week. I see myself in every face that walks through those doors. People who've been told they don't matter. I tell them they do. I tell them because someone needed to tell me. And you did. You held up a mirror, and it shattered the person I'd become. Thank you for that mirror, Mrs. Mensah. It saved my life. I don't ask for forgiveness. I simply ask that you know this. I am changing. Every day, I am becoming someone my grandmother would recognize again. Grace. She sealed the envelope and mailed it the next morning, expecting nothing in return. The story is about to take an unexpected turn. Don't miss what happens next. Check out the part 3 in my channel.